welcome to the Investing Bros. I am T. Shroom. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining me. Well, we've got some scary storm clouds on the horizon. I'm actually going to make an argument for why they're actually pretty bullish. Coming in from China, we've got some interesting news. I'm going to bring it to you all. But before we do, I want to go ahead and jump onto the Bitcoin charts. And today's episode is brought to you by decrypted.tax. You get a free 60-minute consultation with a licensed crypto professional. He's also a tax attorney, right? You get free 60 minutes consultation with everything to gain and nothing to lose with going and chatting with Ernest. Let's go and getting your tax needs addressed ahead of time for this tax season. Taking a look at Bitcoin down on the 4-hour chart, you can see that we're getting a bearish cross up here on the MACD on the 4-hour, but Bitcoin's price action fighting to stay up above the midline of the Bollinger Band. And then down here, we are getting positive money flow, at least on the 4-hour. We'll see in the higher time frames that is actually not the case. But down here on the 4-hour, at least, money flow green after a pretty big move down here on ALGO's hyper wave. So take a look at some higher time frames here. We'll go out to the daily chart. Daily chart actually fighting the other side of the Bollinger Band midline here as we have struggling to get up above that and actually print a candle. As you saw, we had a nice wick and then a second wick this morning as well on these daily candles, but just not able to get up and close a candle above that midline on the daily chart. Now, what you'll notice here is something a lot more bullish on the MACD, right? Green histogram printing here, sprouting a new optimistic tomorrow. However, we are also getting a bullish cross here from the MACD line. So bullish on the day. Maybe this will give us enough kind of technical momentum to get up and print a candlestick today, the first day of trading of this week for Bitcoin. However, if we look down on ALGO, the money flow is just flat. You can kind of see that it's ebbed and flowed throughout the last couple of days as money not knowing which way it wants to go. So interestingly enough, though, we're actually going to go out into the weekly time frame as well. We've looked at the 4-hour, we've looked at the daily. We're going to check out the weekly because, of course, we've had this big bullish hammer here that came down and closed the CME gaps. This isn't the CME, this is spot for Bitcoin, but it closed that CME gap down to 39. And ultimately, it's looking pretty bearish. Why do I say that? On the weekly chart, it's looking bearish because we're about to get a big bear cross up here on the MACD, as you can see here. And this is not just for Bitcoin. In addition to the bear cross, you're also seeing waning green histograms. But you can take a look here. If you look at Ethereum, bear cross coming in, kind of the pinching of these MACD lines coming in after a pretty big and prolonged move to the upside for Ethereum and for Bitcoin. Let's take another sample here. AVAX also a little bit of a different shape there, but still bear cross up on the weekly. Matic, same thing. Not actually very far above the zero line on the MACD. Let's take a look at some other names here. Chainlink has already had, right? Chainlink kind of front runs the market, in my opinion, a little bit. Has already had that bearish cross, and it's really only traded sideways. So just because there's a bearish cross, right, and a movement into red histograms, does not necessarily mean that we're going to have a huge sell-off in the underlying asset. In this case, it's pretty much every crypto, right? There's just been this cross is the result of this specific price movement and kind of the momentum therein. If you get a big move up and then flat, you get a bear cross because the MACD line's saying, hey, buyers are kind of exhausted at this level, but so are sellers, right? So it's not a quick move down. It's a delayed move sideways, and that's probably what we're likely to see. However, this week may just be the wrench thrown into this otherwise pretty much snooze fest of a crypto market, crab market, some might call it. And that comes from a couple of interesting headlines. Of course, we have the Fed meeting this week, and that's going to be pretty interesting to see the first Fed guidance of 2024. Are they going to be bullish? Are they going to be dovish? Will there be any kind of hint from Jerome as to when the first cuts will be? Will they cut tomorrow? Will they cut? I think it's Wednesday is when they will announce the Fed, the new rate decision. But will they cut on Wednesday? We'll see. I highly doubt it. I think they're just going to keep the rates where they are. But they may give some indication as to when, which quarter, there could be a rate cut. So we'll get to that in just a second. But before we do, there's some breaking news out of China. A Hong Kong court has ruled that Evergrande's, China's largest real estate developer, must be liquidated. The stock for Evergrande is now down 20% today, which is yesterday, on the news and trading, which has been halted. Evergrande is now considered the most indebted property developer in the world. This comes at a time when China's real estate index is down 85% in 2 years. China also is preparing hundreds of billions in economic stimulus, along with considering a ban on short selling. This, I had to tweet it out. I already did. You probably already saw it. If you're subscribed to me over on X at TShroom, I had to comment on this. This is the most backwards thing that I've ever seen. It's so crazy, considering ban on short selling. Why isn't the U.S. ever considered a ban on short selling gold? Wouldn't that be good? Doesn't the U.S. have a bunch of gold in Fort Knox? Wouldn't it be in their interest? What is happening in China? So, of course, I'm not advocating a ban on short selling gold. That would be anti-free markets. However, it is interesting to note. We'll keep moving here. I've actually got a clip here from Bloomberg from someone who's got a comment on China. Once the world's largest real estate developer, Evergrande, is now to be liquidated. It has a whopping $300 billion of debt, but also $240 billion of assets. So not too bad. That's, to me, it's about 80 cents on the dollar. So that's actually not too bad of a liquidation event. Therefore, Evergrande, China has refused to bail out billionaires. Are they the true free market? Someone's asking. I don't know. Based on this one, I don't think that China is the real free market. But it's interesting. It's an interesting preponderance. Let's take a look at this clip.
Today at Hong Kong High Court, Justice Linda Chen ordered that liquidation order for Evergrande, which is really a long time coming. She has promised to really wind up the company if there's no progress between Evergrande and its creditors, and this is really happening. We're talking about a company that has over $300 billion in debt, and the bulk of that is in mainland China, onshore, whereas the offshore creditors holds about $20 billion of dollars of debt.
So that's key right there, right? The offshore creditors are owed about $20 billion. That is a vast minority of, I believe she said, the $200 million that's owed to the mainland Chinese. So the real people are going to be affected by this, just because this may be baked in, right? Markets, bond markets, real estate markets kind of pricing this in, this liquidation event for the China's largest real estate development bank. It doesn't mean that real people aren't going to be affected by this. So, while I do think that this ends up actually being a pretty bullish headline overall today, that we might see some volatility on it, it is still going to affect people, and it's disproportionately going to affect the Chinese people, which sucks, right? Just take a moment there just to acknowledge that. But let's continue with the clip.
And that they were looking to restructure, but that restructure plan eventually fell apart. And Evergrande right now has offshore assets such as listed companies of the China Evergrande unit. It has an EV unit that hasn't actually produced any electric cars, and also a service, a property service.
And they're all wound up,
unit.
I suppose, part of the liquidation process.
So they will be considered in the liquidation process. And so what happens next in Hong Kong is that at 2:30 we have another regulating hearing by Justice Linda Chen, and where she will pronounce the reasoning behind why she ordered that winding up.
Not as interested in the reasoning as much as the decision, which has been made by the High Court there in Hong Kong. So, folks, the decision has been made. Evergrande is going into liquidation. That is pretty big news. My feeling, though, is that based on the S&P futures, which I do not have pulled up, but the market is not selling off, right? I think that likely this was already baked in. And as you heard, it is a minority of the debt that is owed to offshore, creditors. So there will be some ripple effects, but a lot of that is going to be contained in China, the Chinese economy, I believe. Now, the second and third order effects could be very, very interesting, as what China's likely to do, as we saw, I believe in the Kabesi letter tweet, is that they're likely to go ahead and start printing, right? Providing stimulus to their economy, which is likely to see a shock. Probably wouldn't be an inappropriate word to use, a shock to the Chinese economy. What happens when you print a bunch of money and you're not America that has the world reserve currency, well, you have real inflation. You're going to have inflation hit, and that's going to potentially be bullish for alternative currencies, right? Like the United States dollar, but also like Bitcoin. Okay, so it's something to think about, and I do think that this ultimately is going to be bullish because it's going to provide certainty, right? This Evergrande saga has kind of been hanging over the head of the overall global markets for a while. I want to say a year and a half. This has been a significant headline, if not longer, for those who've been really focused on the international emerging markets real estate. However, now that there's certainty, now that a court has decided that the bank is going to go into liquidation, this actually provides certainty, and of course, financial planners need certainty in order to make their calculations. I like it because now I know I'm just going to keep buying Bitcoin, right? There's no reason for me to continue to worry. In the crypto space, we have a little bit of an advantage in that sense, is that Bitcoin is just an easy answer to a lot of this chaos. You just keep DCAing, and each and every headline just kind of keeps reaffirming that. Well, I put out a tweet. I said, you are Chinese President Xi. You know the yuan is about to tank. Hyperinflation. What currency do you recommend to the people? Well, out of those who voted, 71% said Bitcoin would be the currency that you recommend to the people, and it's a real question, right? Because if I'm President Xi, right, and my actions have been very anti-American recently when it comes to the financial markets. The Chinese balance sheet for American bonds has been going down for about a decade now, right? And so if I'm President Xi, I have actually a pretty, you also throw in the whole BRICS narrative, right? That's not a small thing either. So if I'm President Xi, I may not be motivated to say, hey, Chinese people, go ahead and start buying dollars and euros because this whole Chinese economy might be suffering for a while. I might say, hey, there's this up and coming, new thing called Bitcoin. Go ahead and buy that. Well, that might be exactly what we're seeing. The polls over on my Twitter may be actually 100% accurate because there's actually a headline here: Hong Kong gets spot Bitcoin ETF application. That's right, an easy on-ramp for Chinese to be able to acquire exposure to Bitcoin, at least. Obviously, we know that's not self-custody, but it's exposure to Bitcoin, a way to sidestep the looming inflation that likely to hit Chinese economy very, very soon. Venture Smart Financial Holdings, a Hong Kong firm, has also said it will file a spot Bitcoin ETF and hopes to start trading during the second quarter. Bloomberg reported earlier this month, kind of indicating to me that their financial regulators are a little quicker in making the decisions regarding Bitcoin spot ETFs. Now, we'll see. Those have not been approved yet. But so far, two major financial firms, Venture Smart Financial, and I think the other one's Harvest. Those names don't mean anything to me. Harvest Global, right? But I assume that those are probably fairly large financial institutions that are ready to serve up these ETFs to traditional financiers there over in China. So that's going to be bullish, very bullish. That headline coming out on the same day, that Evergrande essentially getting that ruling from the Hong Kong High Court that they're done. They're closing up shop. They're selling off their assets, and it looks like it's going to be about 80 cents to the dollar for those creditors. Not a terrible outcome, but this is still going to send negative economic ripples all throughout China, probably Asia, and they will be felt to some extent, although smaller extent, in the United States. So it's good for certainty overall, though. So I do think that this would probably be a little bit of a sell-off, a little bit of volatility today in the American equity markets, but likely I think those get bought. I think that dip gets bought, and we just keep going higher for the S&P, NASDAQ, and the Dow Jones. Well, that's overall bullish. I think that you're going to see those headlines. They may be kind of spinning that to be negative. My reading of this is, yeah, it's negative, but I think it's baked in, right? Evergrande, that whole crazy financial storm cloud has been looming over the markets for a while. Any kind of hot potato exposure that investors have had to Evergrande, they've probably since gotten rid of, right? Saying, I want to get out of this, and I want to, replace that on my balance sheet with something else, right? So baked in, and then also the international creditors, of course, making up a minority of the debt. Well, that brings us to another bullish story here, which is it's not just China that's adding new spot ETFs. The U.S. may be seeing a new spot Bitcoin ETF. Yes, we couldn't get enough of it, so we have to come back. Nate Garesi says They may shock the world and offer something that's 10 basis points in a few months. Eric Buchanan said, Schwab to enter the spot Bitcoin ETF race. I say it's already a foregone conclusion. Agree with Eric and believe that will happen sooner rather than later. That would be adding another very large, custody for, the world's largest, richest people, being Charles Schwab. You've probably heard of that brand if you live in North America. I believe it's a $8.5 trillion financial manager with that much under management. So, more bullish. Still haven't heard any kind of change of heart from Vanguard and Merrill Lynch, but Schwab was waiting on the sidelines, and it looks like they're going to go ahead and throw in their hat with the Bitcoin race. We'll see how that goes for them. All right, we'll turn our focus now to the Federal Reserve, which is having their big annual meeting this week. They'll have their meeting, I believe it is tomorrow, and then on the 31st, they will announce the decision that they make. So, of course, we all kneel, we all have a moment of silence to listen to what is uttered from the mouth of he who represents the brilliance of the Federal Reserve Institution. May their name be held to high esteem, right? I say with the deepest sarcasm. January Fed meeting dates and what to expect. Here from Yahoo Finance, bringing it to us right down the middle. The Federal Open Market Committee, otherwise known as the FOMC, maybe you've heard of them. They've kept rates steady during their last meeting in December of 2024, signaled several rate cuts throughout 2024. On the eve of the next FOMC meeting, as many of three Fed representatives have advocated for maintaining steady interest rates, right? So higher for longer. Markets still see rate unchanged in January and predict a 48% probability of a rate cut at the next meeting in March. So close to a majority, not a majority, right? I would say it's basically predicting another pause, another neither cut or hike. If Fed Chairman Jerome Powell signals a possible rate cut in March, the USD, United States dollar, will likely weaken against all major currencies. And yes, that would probably equate to Bitcoin go up. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Dixie at this hour here. Just before market open here at 9:17 on January the 29th. Let's go ahead and take a look here at the Dixie. I'm out on the weekly chart, and as you can see, it's kind of been in this nice little channel here going back to, this really started kind of the year open for 2023, right? And now you could see that the Dixie's making a run here on the weekly chart for the midline of the Bollinger Band. I'm thinking probably going to get a rejection off of that, but we may run up to it. Now this week, if Jerome sees fit, now he's running a lot of calculations in his head, everything with the labor market, with bond rates, with inflation obviously at the forefront of his mind, and global GDP, American GDP, all of the oil prices, all of these things are considerations for the FOMC. But I think that they're going to make the decision that the market is anticipating, which is just no change, right? Just keeping the rates where they are. Well, that could potentially come across as dovish, right? The market could interpret that as dovish, and the Dixie could come down and not actually test that midline of the Bollinger Band, right? Historically, when the Dixie shows weakness, that's when Bitcoin is able to shoot higher. And it's not just the dollar that is scheduled to be weaker into the future, into Q1 and Q2. It's also, as we saw, the yuan. The Chinese have all but said that they're going to come out and have to stimulate the Chinese economy to overcome what is about to happen with the Evergrande liquidation. So, bullish for Bitcoin. We sit very nicely, and I think that that's going to be the trend of the next 2 to 3, maybe in longer decades of Bitcoin holders, is you just keep winning and winning and winning, and when the price of Bitcoin is low, you just buy it, right? So maybe it's too simple. Maybe there's something we're missing, but when I look across the world, there's a lot of debt, right? And there's a lot of non-fixed supply instruments, and when you look at Bitcoin, right, Bitcoin can't default. Bitcoin can't go into liquidation. Bitcoin can't really make mistakes in the sense that software doesn't make mistakes. So there's a lot to be kind of discussed there at a deeper level. But let's take a look here. I put up a poll. I asked, hey, first Fed guidance of 2024 coming this week. When do we see the first rate cuts? The BROZ said Q2 is when we'll see those first cuts. Those overwhelming majority of 60% there. So if you don't follow me on Twitter, you're missing out. Go ahead and follow the T Shroom at T Shroom. You're gonna love it. Well, folks, that's about it. There's one more story. We're going to get to it in just a second, but let me remind you that this episode is brought to you by Decrypted.tax. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, T-Shroom, with the ads, with the promos. Come on. Listen, if you invested or if you traded crypto in 2023, you've got to report that to the IRS, right? No matter what kind of thing you're pulling with Tornado Cash and Monero and keeping money on cold wallets and things like that, you're going to want to get ahead of this, right? Especially if you sold for profit, you made some capital gains that you have to pay in the United States, right? You're going to need to report that. Go ahead and get ahead of any kind of crazy thoughts that you have about not filing taxes, not filing your crypto taxes. Go ahead and at least go talk to Ernest. Give him a shot. 60 minutes, free consultation. You have everything to gain and nothing to lose, really, right? You can schedule some time to go talk to Ernest. So if that sounds appealing to you, you actually get 25% off his services just by being a bro. Tell him that Investing Bros sent you, okay? Tell him Taylor and T. Shroom and Tim sent you, and you'll actually get 25% off those services. And don't wait any longer, right? We know that the deadline is April 14th, but you want to go ahead and get those filed early. As soon as you get your W-2, go ahead and give Ernest a call, or even before, just to get all of that sorted out. You won't be disappointed. You're right. Ernest's a super cool guy. He's got a lot of cool war stories when it comes to taxes. Last story of the day here, guys. Crypto goes commercial. Google policy update. Welcome spot Bitcoin ETF ads. So you may have been seeing them. I actually think I saw. Yeah, look right there. It was there. Diversify your portfolio into Bitcoin. So they're not lying, guys. It's right here. Like literally, I'm just clicking around on websites that have ads. Let's see if we can get one here. Oh, I closed this ad. This is for like a laptop or something. Switch to 5G, interest rates. So yeah, ultimately we are seeing those ads circulate, which is pretty cool, and that's very bullish for Bitcoin, right? Because these ETF issuers, they're not poor. They have a lot of money. They have a lot of money to spend on these ETFs. You've probably seen the QQQ, right? That's Invesco spraying up that ticker all over the world. I've seen it at like parades. I've seen it at Christmas light expos. I've seen the QQQ everywhere. Well, it's about to be GBTC. It's about to be IBIT, right? It's about to be HODL. I think that's Van Eyck's ticker for their spot Bitcoin ETF. These companies are going to be paying to encourage people to buy Bitcoin. That is very bullish, and that starts today with Google is the number one advertising network out there. Number one, the next biggest is Facebook and Instagram, right? And Google is like 3 or 4 times bigger in terms of their ad network. So it's a pretty big deal, guys. It's going to be very, very bullish for Bitcoin and that will trickle into crypto as well. So I'm very optimistic. But guys, that's the majority of the news today. Of course, at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tim and I will be going live, and we'll be bringing you any developments on any of those stories or anything new that comes out. Make sure that you go ahead and tune in at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to catch me and Tim doing a lot more TA, doing a lot more news coverage. Now, you're probably wondering, hey, T-Shroom, what the heck is going on? Where's the video from Tim? Where's his TA deep dive that he usually does? Well, Tim was sick this morning. Hopefully he's going to be well rested and better by 3 p.m. I'm hoping he will be. Knowing Tim, I think he will probably pull through and make it in time for that 3 p.m. show. Well, let's go ahead and jump over to the chat, and then we'll probably wrap up with a couple of more charts, taking a look at those. I see Pokemon Gains is actually the first in chat, and I don't think I've ever seen that name. Guys, if you're watching the Investing Bros for the first time, maybe you're even hearing about crypto for the first time, you're in the right spot. There's a lot of great crypto YouTube channels, but here at the Investing Bros, we like to just give you the bros reaction, right? We're not trying to say that we're like Wall Street experts. We're not trying to say that we're crypto developers, right? We are just bros. We are just bros. And we're really, really happy that you're coming along this journey with us to help really define an industry, right? Invest in what the ideas that we like and put our money where our mouth is. We're all pretty heavily invested in crypto. Blackie Chan says 7 waiting and 7 likes. Off to a good start. Absolutely. Whenever you are watching this video, make sure that you hit the like button. And if you're new, consider subscribing. We really, really appreciate it if you would come along with us on our journey here as a bro community. Dylan Martinez said, yo, bros. So Dylan Martinez knows what's up. Gia S said, happy Monday. It is a happy Monday. So far, we have taken a very bearish story of Evergrande getting ordered to liquidate from the Hong Kong High Court. Doesn't that sound official? And we have done a judo move on the news and said, hey, that's actually going to be bullish because it's providing certainty, a conclusion, right? Some closure, if you will, to a very, very bearish story that more than likely, in my estimation, is probably priced in. We're going to find out here at 9:30 if I'm right. There's a chance that the markets completely sell off. But I think that the markets are probably going to hold steady through the Fed decision on Wednesday and the 31st and the 30th and the 31st, right? And then also we're going into earnings season, right? So I think that the markets are going to be much more interested in what American corporations are doing in terms of their earnings, right? And I think that's going to steer kind of just general liquidity conditions a lot more. Now, if the Evergrande headline, if that whole narrative really wreaks havoc on the Chinese economy and that starts to have ripple effects, right? If they're going to start devaluing their currency, right, by stimulating, that could potentially make buying exports much more expensive. And that could have, that can mean Chinese people buy less things from other countries, right? And that could have kind of a bigger ripple effect, right? That'd be a second order effect from this Evergrande liquidation event. However, I think that that's probably going to take weeks, if not months, to trickle into the actual supply chain and the economy, the global economy. And by then, we will probably, if it's relevant, right? If it's still pervasive and still having negative bearish effects on the economy, we will know. But I think that this Fed meeting will probably be fairly dovish and kind of right down the middle, walking the line as the FOMC, as Jerome Powell is so good at doing. He's a pro at walking the fence. And then the earnings season they're scheduled to be pretty bullish, right? So, and markets are already at an all-time high. I think they're just going to probably push higher over on the equity side, except Tesla. Tesla just getting beaten down. It's sad. Glad I sold as it was breaking back through down through that downtrending line of support. But ultimately, guys, I do think that we're in for a pretty bullish Q1. At least that's the way it's looking, even for crypto. I think that if we may even have a bottom in here, but that's a time for another story. That's a story for another time, as some might say. But Justin Eubanks saying done. I'm not sure what he's done with. Maybe he's done liking. Let's see. El Mellow Fellow said, yo, and Elo Brown said, smash the likes and share on X. Let's go. Absolutely. Share it on X, share it far, share it wide. Help folks understand that this Evergrande story is actually bullish because it's providing certainty to risk markets. And it's also probably baked in, right? Those are the two kind of water cooler talking points. You're going to the water cooler, and the cool guy who thinks he knows everything about finance at work, he's saying, oh, this Evergrande stuff's really going to tank the market. You can see, well, actually, the Evergrande narrative is banked in, and it's actually bullish because it provides certainty to risk markets. Boom. You're welcome. Thank you, T-Shroom. All right, guys, we're wrapping up the show here. It's been a really good show, and I really appreciate you all tuning in. I see Alexo in the chat. I see Army Piper in the chat. Let's go. We've got some mega bros. I also see Eric Wallen, Gary C. I saw Yair Navarro, but I cannot see where he is in here. So good to see all the bros. Gia S, of course. Nancy Croy I saw as well. Gustavo Vallejos is in the Discord now. So in addition to, this episode is brought to you by decrypt.tax. So definitely go check them out. Get that free 60-minute consultation. Tell Ernest we sent you. Get a jump on your tax season. But also, if you want to take a next step and join the bros, right, you can hit that join button down in the YouTube. If you're watching the video, it's just right here, right? You've got the video, you've got that handsome guy right there, and then you've got the join button right here. You hit that join button, and you can pick from the different layers, the different troughs, the different membership perk tiers, right? And you can find the most popular ones. This is $4.99 Bros. That gives you access to the Discord. We have a free Discord as well. The link's in the description if you just want to check it out. But then it also gives you all kinds of cool badges and perks and access to the bros at a different level. So thank you all so much for joining, so much for tuning in. And remember, this Evergrande story, I think, is actually going to pan out to be quite bullish for markets, or at least neutral for markets. If I'm wrong, we will find out here in about a minute, right? The stock market will tell us what's up. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Keep those stop losses tight today and stay hydrated. T-Shroom out.
Trying to make paper, turn that better to cake. Money like Lego, connect the dots, stack bank. We are investing bros. We are investing bros. Army pipe, lethal on trade. Entries and exits, worthy of praise. Tim, the professor of the TA. Shout it out loud on the PA. T-Shroom's news got the word. Doing better than what he deserves. Beamer, leave no evidence. Soon fly coop with his dividend. Trying to make paper, turn that better to cake. Money like Lego, connect the dots, stack bank. We are investing bros. We are investing bros.